Welcome everyone to the Unboxing Careers podcast, where we shed light on what different careers are really like so that you could choose a career you will really love. Today we dive back into the engineering field with Kristian Villanueva. But before we do, let's talk briefly about unboxing thoughtful gifts. At thoughtfulcollection.com, you can shop from a wide selection of curated products you can feel good about, helping you express friendship, gratitude, and love. The next time you need to, don't just gift, give thoughtfully at thoughtfulcollection.com. All right, I'd like to welcome to the show Kristian Villanueva, Senior Mechanical Engineer at Priority Design. So Kristian, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me, Greg.
This will be fun. Second mechanical engineer, but I'm going to guess you are doing something different than my first one. So this will be a nice little branch for us here. So let's start with this. Let's level set. So tell us about your current role, a little bit about your firm, so we have an idea about kind of the operations of your firm, and then we'll get into maybe the concentration a little bit as well.
Sure. Like you said, I'm a mechanical engineer. I work for a company called Priority Designs. Priority Designs is a small product development company that helps bring clients' ideas to life. By small, I mean about 80 people or so. And we're an ESOP, so we're employee owned. But we have a handful of different groups and practice areas. And those are people that I work with within research, brand, design, meaning industrial design, UX, UI, mechanical engineering, software engineering, electrical engineering, prototyping, and soft goods.
Excellent. And then we both mentioned mechanical engineer, which can take on a lot of different forms based on kind of the role you're doing, the company you're with. So what specifically do you do as a mechanical engineer?
Sure. Well, I'll kind of take a step back, actually, and maybe answer that a different way. So at its core, I think engineering is just problem solving. It's creative problem solving using logical methods and tools. Those tools can be physically tangible, like a wrench or screwdriver, or they can be intangible and abstract, like math and science. So it can be a method too. So, trying to encourage young people to get into engineering and science and technology field. So, anyone can be an engineer. Mechanical engineering is inventing and building tools, machines or components of a machine or mechanism. So it requires an understanding of the physical, tangible world, spatial awareness, and a deep understanding of how stuff interacts with each other. My specific role in mechanical engineering is within the context of product development. So basically, I help make sure that stuff can be made, built, and put together, and that it works for as long as it needs to work by whoever's using it, and that it satisfies a set of constraints. It could be time, it could be cost, it could be performance. Generally, you may have to just pick two of those, but that's essentially what I do.
And can you give us an example, if you can, of a product or mechanism or whatever, of something that you've worked on that maybe someone would know or have a maybe an association with, if it's not like a name brand product?
Yeah, sure. So, so there are a lot of different areas and product fields that I work in. It takes, what people don't understand is that it takes a long time to develop things that you buy. It's a huge challenge. So, it takes it takes a lot of time. It's taken several years to go from this, a piece of porcelain that could break, a drinking device, to something like this, which is, leak proof. Thermally, it can last. It can hold your liquid for a long time. You can drop it; it won't break. It's an exceptional challenge. So let me grab another prop here for you. So here's here's a saw. You might use it to cut wood, cut a tree branch. From a technological standpoint, it's by today's standards old. And then how do you make that process easier for the user? So here's something that I worked on within the past couple of years. That's a tree lopper. So this can allow you to cut a tree branch way quicker than a saw could.
I love tree loppers. You're talking my language here. I'm going to assume that you pull these props together for this. You don't just have a saw hanging out next to you at all times.
You'd be surprised, but yes, I did pull out some stops for your podcast here, and hopefully, I realize that these props may not be as useful for our audio only listeners, but
that's okay.
Hopefully, I can do my best to describe those as well here.
They have access to YouTube at some point during the day, so they'll be all right. So what about this? Maybe let's go back here. How soon did you know you wanted to be an engineer?
There were probably a couple times. But when I was in college, or I'll take it a little bit further back than that. Leading up to college, my parents wanted me to go into medicine. I'm naive high school kid, so I don't know what I really want to do with my life. So I'm like, okay. I ended up going to Ohio State University, the Ohio State University in Columbus, Ohio, and that's where I'm located now. And I actually started out in pre-pharmacy. The plan was to go through the pharmacy route, take the coursework, and then go to medical school. The summer after my freshman year, I had an opportunity to take a job with Gojo. They're based out of Akron, Ohio. They make Purell hand sanitizer and soap products and dispensers. I worked for them for a hand hygiene study. So what I would do during this hand hygiene study work period was I would go to local hospitals and I would take a look at and observe whether or not medical professionals were using hand hygiene at the correct time, at the right place. So an example of this is when physicians go into an exam room, they should wash their hands as soon as they enter the room, or use hand sanitizer. During this job, I realized that I did not like thinking about germs, and in concert with that, I just did not like the chemistry classes I was taking my freshman year. They were too abstract, super challenging. A lot of times they call the early chemistry classes and OChem classes that you might take in your freshman and sophomore year weed out classes, which it actually worked because it weeded me out from medicine. And I took a step back, reflected on my life really, and realized I always liked math. I was involved in this thing called Science Olympiad in 7th and 8th grade, where you get involved in different science projects and science competitions. There was this one competition called Mission Possible, where you build a Rube Goldberg device, which is essentially a complex mechanism that doesn't really do anything useful. But I enjoyed doing that, was always around, my dad working on things around the house, tinkering with car stuff, house projects, that sort of thing. And that's really what led me to become a mechanical engineer. And it actually made sense after I really reflected on it.
That's really cool. So my son he just joined Science Olympiad 7th grade this year.
Awesome.
So I'm excited about this as well. So the other engineer also mentioned Science Olympiad, and I'm like, all right. I have no idea if I'll like it, but I'm excited for him. So it's nice to hear you mention that. So that's interesting that I was speaking to someone just last night who said, "Oh, I went to college for something. My parents were kind of pushing me into it, and then I realized, hey, yeah, this isn't really for me, right?" And then pivoted to a nice, successful career. So I guess there was something you said toward the end of that. Looking back at it, it made sense, right? You've always had an interest in these things. You've always been good at math, as you said. So I think it's a nice lesson for people out there to kind of, I don't know, listen to their gut a little bit if they're when they're thinking about things. So you go to school, you pivot when you're in school, study the engineering route. Talk to us a little bit, if you can, about like a typical career path for an engineer. So you go into college, you graduate. What kind of comes next? Walk us through that if you can a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of the good jobs, it seems like, or the more interesting ones, seem like they require 3 to 5 years of experience. My backup plan actually was just to go to grad school if I couldn't find a career as a mechanical engineer or a job out of college. Which luckily that didn't happen. I graduated in 2010, which was when our country wasn't in the best state economically. But luckily, I found a job with an automotive supplier, doing a lot of injection molding, design, and engineering, mechanism design for automotive interior components, that sort of thing. And then a few years after that, I was able to land an assistant chief engineer position with another automotive tier 1 supplier, and gained a lot more project management skills and high level just managerial and people skills through that role. After that, I sort of realized that I didn't enjoy going full on within the managerial route, and I enjoyed the technical aspects of engineering. So I wanted to find a good mix. And luckily I found Priority Designs, who I had actually been in contact with for a long time, but just the right opportunity and the timing just didn't work until around 2020. So now I'm at Priority Designs, and there's a wide variety of projects and industries that I get to work on. And as far as role, I get to sort of choose my own adventure too, as far as the level of workload that I take on, as far as project management versus the sort of boots on the ground technical skills.
Do you like the flexibility of being able to move between industries and projects and things like that?
I do. In the automotive world, it is a huge challenge because from just a mental standpoint for me, because the projects that you're working on are generally a 3 to 5 year life cycle. So you are intensely looking at the same thing, and scrutinizing and putting a ton of rigor into the same product or similar product for 3 to 5 years, and it can be mentally challenging from that standpoint too. As you just need a break from the monotony. For me, that didn't work. Some people are comfortable in that environment, and that's great. And but for me now, I appreciate the flexibility within role and scope and breadth of the different projects that I get to be a part of.
So I want to ask about what your typical week looks like here in just a second. But you said some people, and this is just human nature, right? Some people are going to be okay with that monotony, right? Focus, they've got a project, they see a goal, they work toward that goal and they achieve it and they're good. You like the flexibility, the change of pace a little bit more, keep the mind fresh. So are there any things that maybe someone might be able to identify about themselves early on and say, hey, I'm probably better off suited not changing courses, but like having the variety than someone that is okay doing the monotonous stuff? Are there anything you could think of that might be an indicator for people?
That's a great question. I think it's easy for me to look back now and maybe say that, but you almost have to go through the process of living it to realize that you want to shift. And I think that's perfectly fine within people's careers. People shift careers all the time and pivot, and it works out. As far as early indicators, I think I do enjoy automobiles and the automobile world, but I think growing up I just had a wide variety of interests. So I was into sports, basketball, lacrosse, but I also was into music a little bit, piano, that sort of thing. So basically, if I look back at what my interests and hobbies were through life, which was probably more of a balanced sort of interest and hobby range, that probably would have been a good predictor into the variety that I was seeking and enjoy now.
That's interesting. So I love variety. I hate doing the same thing over and over. I can eat the same lunch every day for 2 years, and I've done this before.
Oh, right? Absolutely. So I've had oatmeal. I think the past 5 weeks for maybe more than that. Maybe 10 weeks for lunch or for breakfast. Sorry.
It's funny. I did oatmeal for like 2 years in a row, so I completely get it. So, all right, I want to talk about your week to week a little bit. So you mentioned you have a little more autonomy to say, hey, I want to do some more project manager heavy stuff over here, more hands on over here. So walk us through what a typical week might look like for you.
Sure. So the company I work at, we work with a variety of clients. So some are huge, big name companies you may have heard of, such as Corona here, or
that's the loppers, not the beer.
That is the loppers. So large companies like that, but also entrepreneurs. So some of that requires fielding new inquiries from potential clients, or even seeking potential clients and understanding the problems that they face. And then there's also the collaboration aspect. So collaborating with clients during a project, as well as other groups from our other practice areas, or if someone were in a larger company or corporation, I'd probably be called other departments. So there's the collaboration aspect with them, as well as collaboration collaboration with manufacturing partners, doing brainstorm sessions early on in the ideation phases, creating engineering assets or deliverables, so technical documentation, 3D modeling, 2D drawings, analysis, so structural analysis, hand calculations, doing testing. So there's a lot of different types of testing that you can do in the mechanical world. There's tensile testing, compression testing, shear, friction, tearing, peel, bonding, indentation, fracture, crush, torsion, axial. And if you do all those a bunch of times, you can do cycle fatigue loading. So lots of different type of testing. There could be tolerance analysis, reverse engineering, root cause analysis. So there's really not a typical week or day. It just depends on what the problem is and what we think the best steps or process is to get there and to help our clients realize their vision and create the best product for people.
Is it because it's not typical? You mentioned a bunch of different things, and I'm assuming testing and things like you mentioned load testing and stuff, right? So I'm assuming you got to be pretty laser on while you're doing those things. I could be wrong here, but on your normal work day, are you laser focused on all those tasks you mentioned, or are there certain tasks like a statistical analysis on Excel or something that can be, I would say mind-numbing, but a little more mundane where you don't have to have 100% laser focus on it all time? So it's a really long way to ask you, Kristian, like, do you have to be on 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week, or are there times where you can kind of give your mind a mental break as you're doing tasks?
Oh, there's definitely opportunities for that. So I would say 2D drawings, those or they might be called engineering prints for other folks. That's definitely a task where you can sort of not shut your mind completely off, but they're simpler tasks that don't require a ton of brain power, and even testing. Once you get a test set up and figured out, it's sort of easy just to run and go through the methodical steps to complete that test. Excuse me.
Okay, very good. So I know some things you're just on, it becomes exhausting after a while. It's good to know. If you look at your week to week, or your project's going to change, so we can expand this beyond that, but not necessarily about your career, but about your, no, I don't know, it could be tasks, but what do you like most about your work? Right. So that could be task or I guess career in general.
Yeah. I really enjoy brainstorming and collaborating with people. And along with that, I would say 3D modeling and then prototyping, just because you can get what's essentially up here in your brain and your mind's eye. You can get that onto a blank sheet of paper, and then you can get it on the computer screen, and then you could bring it to life. So it's the most exciting part is basically bringing something to life physically, and that's extremely rewarding, right? So for me, that's a great part of it.
And how about something you like least? So it doesn't have to be about the career, but it's like, man, if I could not have to do the Excel for 3 hours a week, like get it out of here, right? So something that you don't like about it.
Yeah, I would definitely say in the corporate world, and when you're in that sort of middle management, maybe even upper management position, you're doing a lot of meetings, and I happen to come into that phase of my career near the time when COVID began. So there were just so many meetings, and it felt like my job became essentially 75% meetings and 25% real work, or maybe 75% meetings and 75% real work. And I personally, I didn't enjoy having, that many meetings and doing, and not having a lot to show for it. It was mostly just uh, sort of reporting and sort of the corporate bureaucracy can sometimes take a toll, and when you're in those positions.
Perfect. And how about essential skills for, we'll partition this to like mechanical engineers or your particular role. So are there any skills that someone could look at and go, hey, if you're not good at this, might not be for you? Or are there counterbalances to kind of everything? Hey, you might not be good at it, it's important, but there's these other avenues you can do. Any particular skills you could point to for people?
Yeah, for mechanical engineering specifically, I would say you definitely have to have an aptitude and intuition for math, physics, and science. That's not to say you have to be the best at any one of those, but you have to be competent. And yeah, there's not a lot of great substitutes for that. So, if you want to get into engineering, but maybe not necessarily mechanical, there are other avenues for you if you're not particularly attuned towards those subjects.
Perfect. And I'm going to combine that answer with my next question based on something you said before about going to Ohio State. So, advice for high schoolers that think, hey, I know I want to be an engineer, or hey, it sounds cool, might be for me, but I don't really know, but they're interested in kind of exploring it. I'm going to combine that with your talk about those weed out classes at Ohio State for the first year med students. If you go back to high school, are there certain classes that a high school person might be able to take, or certain things they could do to kind of weed them out and go, okay, if I take this and I hate it, I'm probably not going to like the career path. So I'm going to kind of combine those things, if that makes sense, into kind of guidance for high school kids.
Yeah, I think math classes, especially your calculus classes, if I think I got like a B minus or maybe even a C in math in high school. But so you don't have to be great at them, but you do have to understand what's going on. Physics was more my thing, so definitely those types of classes. So calculus or AP calculus, same with physics, and maybe chemistry, biology. I realized that I didn't like, cutting open a cat. So maybe that should have been the earlier warning that I shouldn't go into medicine. But I think right now there are a lot of great opportunities for high school students with STEM classes. So anything that allows you to also combine those abstract math or physics concepts and put it into practice with building stuff. If there are any courses related to designing or doing CAD, which is computer aided design, 3D modeling, I would definitely encourage high schoolers to take courses that encourage those foundational courses like math and physics, but also allow them to apply it to building real things. So I think a lot of high schools are starting to get behind some, basic manufacturing classes, or even high schools now have 3D printers. Those types of courses will definitely help out.
Excellent. I'm going to put you in a tough position here and kind of take the backside of that thing. So you're right. Schools are providing more of these opportunities for students, but there are schools, say inner city schools in poor neighborhoods, that maybe are behind the eight ball. They don't have the funding to do those things. So if one of those students are listening, obviously, hey, science, math, take those things are going to be offered. So dig in there. But is there anything maybe kind of going back to when you were a kid that maybe didn't have those opportunities necessarily? Something extra those students might be able to do that don't have those opportunities available to them? Or is it just, hey, you've got to like science and math, you've got to understand the concepts and just do a little extra work in that front? Or is there something else?
Yeah, I think if you enjoy building stuff or taking stuff apart to the point where you may break some stuff, and hopefully sometimes put it back together at home and just tinker. Yeah, you don't need a lot of technology to tinker and figure out how stuff is made and put together. Obviously, there are a lot of good resources now online with YouTube, and I also recommend, if you don't have the resources at school, get online, and there are some web-based CAD modeling, webware software out there right now. I would definitely encourage students in those situations to just keep tinkering and being curious and trying to build stuff and learning on their own.
Excellent. And then let's push this out to college and then beyond. So could be like you, transitioning to engineer. They could be going to college right out of the gate and saying, okay, I'm going to study engineering, get into that track there. Anything specific you might offer to college students for either finding a concentration they love, preparing themselves to get into the workforce? Anything specific you might be able to offer those students?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to sound cliche, but just get involved in different groups and organizations outside of your regular coursework. So, Formula SAE or those types of groups or extracurriculars are great. Build connections with people who aren't in engineering. I think that could set you apart potentially. A lot of new grad engineers are great from a technical standpoint, but maybe don't know or understand business very well. But if you have a friend or someone who's in marketing or in a business school of some sort, you can really build value and connections that will help you create innovative things, and will help you in your career in general. So the classic example of that is Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs, where Steve was just this engineer, and Steve Wozniak was just this engineer, not just an engineer, and then Steve Jobs was also just a crazy entrepreneurial spirit. So yeah, building those connections in college, I think is super important. Learning how to communicate verbally and visually is also important as well. So I'm not sure if I answered your question super directly, but that's where I landed.
You answered it much better than I asked it, so I think you're in good shape there.
All right.
Any tips for people maybe newly entering the workforce? You mentioned connections here, which a lot of times that can help you land the first job or at least get intros into places. I think the better way to maybe frame this out is like what might separate two new candidates going into a job from one another?
I think that a lot of that has to do with the interview process and even leading up to the interview, your preparation and the documents that you have when you're applying to jobs. So what I mean by that is, a lot of people just have the text-based resumes, but creating something visual, especially in engineering or product development, is extremely useful and beneficial. So even if it's a project that you worked on during college, a group project or something, um, make a little document or take pictures and build it into a little mini portfolio, um, to catch people's eye and attention. I think that's something that can really separate you, um, along with trying to get internships and real world experience. I think that's huge. Try to get real world and firsthand experience through college. Um, Try to build connections with companies. Um, Find a mentor who you think is doing well, or you can see yourself doing what they do, and try to pick their brain um, about how to approach uh, your life or your career.
Kristian, how about some common misconceptions? And I'll let you answer it either in the engineering field as a whole or for mechanical engineers.
Um, all of the conceptions are true. No. Uh, yeah, I think a lot of people might think that it can be boring, or you're just crunching numbers all day. But I think if you find um, the right company or the right project, and I think it can be a really um, exciting career. So I think people think that engineers might be boring. That's partially true, but not fully true. So I think we're not boring. We're exciting people. So
There you go. I mean, how can you not be exciting when you just have a pair of loppers and a saw hanging around your family room, you know?
yeah, exactly.
Kristian, how about the most? I'll give you two questions. You can answer them kind of together if you want, or separate them. But what's the most challenging part of your career, and what is the most rewarding part of your career?
Um, yeah, I think the most challenging part is that I can't turn it off. In terms of how my brain works, when I go to the grocery store, or even preparing to go to the grocery store, I visualize in my head the grocery store and the route that I'm going to take, and I plan my list based on that route so that I can have the most efficient route possible. Of course, first you also have to do an inventory of what you have at home, um, and that's sort of how I approach my life, in terms of I'm always thinking probably hyper methodically, whereas my wife might zigzag around the grocery store, um, uh, loading the dishwasher. I'm gonna put the plate, or the where I think is the best and most well organized place for it, where the water's going to hit it the best, to make sure that it's going to get clean uh, in the most optimal way. So the challenge is that you can't turn it off, but that, I guess you could also see that as a gift too. But there's definitely an engineering type.
So All right, I gotta pause on this dishwasher thing for a moment here. This is my wife just has given up and
It's the
rolls her
age-old
eyes
debate.
and lets me reload the dishwasher after she does it, and she's good
Uh-huh.
with it now. She's like, whatever. I don't know if I should have been an engineer with my life or I'm just OCD, but you just described two things that I do all the time when I go to the stores. I plan out my route, and uh, I am very peculiar with loading the dishwasher as well.
Uh-huh.
So I kind of look at it as dishwasher as a sanitizer, right? I don't know if you rinse your
Mm-hmm.
plates before you put them in, but I certainly do.
Mm-hmm.
But like putting a pan flat down on the bottom, I'm thinking anything above that is going to get minimal water spray, right? Which is going to be
Exactly.
minimal clean. Yeah.
Greg, you could
Okay.
have that in another universe. You're an engineer, I think.
I'm almost 50. Can I? How late is it to change?
It's
Change
never too
careers.
late, man.
Okay. So, honey, when you're listening to this, an engineer has told me that I'm correct. So thank you for that, Kristian.
It doesn't mean that you're correct. It just means that she's actually working with a different set of constraints and priorities. Because I've had this similar
Kill me.
discussion with my wife, right? So she might say, it actually might take me longer to load it because I'm thinking about these things. Whereas she's trying to load it and then simultaneously maybe trying to do something else or trying to do so. She, in that situation, she prioritized speed over the optimal, cleaning.
As they say, speed kills. All right, Kristian, before we wrap up here, is there anything about your career, job, anything like that that you kind of wish you knew sooner, that you learned? And you're like, oh man, if I had only known that 10 years ago.
Yeah. So in college and high school and elementary school, all your problems are extremely well defined, right? They're beautifully defined, and there's typically one right answer. Maybe not one process to get there, but there's usually an answer. In the real world, your problems are not well defined, and you may not even know what problem you're trying to solve. You may have to extract that or try to dig into something or collaborate with people to even understand what the problem is. So in the real world, there's a lot more flexibility and fluidity to what's going on. So you have to approach things, I guess, more open-minded and more flexibly. So that's definitely one thing. And like I mentioned before, it's extremely challenging to innovate. I gave the teacup and the mug example. It takes hundreds of years to go from a wax candle to this, right? So it's a challenge to innovate. So don't get discouraged. It's taken humans a long time to get from this to this. I'll throw in one more. Well, maybe I'll. Yeah. So and
Yeah.
there's a lot of constraints that that different people will be pulling you in multiple directions. So I gave the example of maybe cost, time, and performance. Pick two, because you're always going to be confronted with a list of conflicting constraints from a lot of people, and you have to work together to figure out what's the best solution. So yeah, all things that I wish I knew sooner.
Really good answer. So you said you were gonna show me one thing, and it looked like maybe a lacrosse head. Did I pick that up right?
It is. So
Okay.
yeah, again, innovation is a challenge. this is probably also already an innovation from where lacrosse started with wooden sticks, but it takes time, and it can take a lot of money to get from something like this, which is a traditional mesh pocket, to this, which is a digital knit, digital 3D knit solution. And so the moral, I guess, is don't, like I said, don't get discouraged about the bumps in the road, and sort of just keep your head up.
Excellent. Kristian, anything I maybe neglected to ask you that you feel is really important for the audience to know today?
Yeah, I think there's definitely an engineering type. I very strongly feel that that engineering sort of chose me in a way. So in God we trust. Everyone else bring data. Is the glass half empty or half full? The glass was made to the wrong specifications. If you think this way, you're probably suited for a career in engineering. Yeah, so that's what I have for you.
Awesome. I always say the glass is half empty and top me off. Go ahead and fill it up. So, all right,
Nice.
Kristian.
I like that. I like that.
There you
I like
go.
that. Get more.
But your answer was a true engineer answer, though. 100%. All right, so Kristian, you kind of know this is coming, I think. You said you listened to a previous episode. I don't know if you got all the way through it, but I'm going to ask you to choose a different career that you think you'd be happy in. And I'm going to take medical. Well, you probably wouldn't be happy in medicine, so I'll leave it on the table. What else? What else do you think you would do?
Man, I would probably be doing something in the sports world. So I got I had one more prop. I didn't get to show it. So here's the lacrosse helmet. Here's another thing that my company now has worked on that helps prevent brain injuries. So I'd probably be doing something in the sports world. I love sports. I coach basketball, youth travel basketball for my son in the winter. I don't know. I'll do one more. Maybe I'd be designing shoes. Go from this, The Sandlot. Shout out to The Sandlot, one of the greatest movies ever. This to this. This is another digital knit product here.
What type of
sneakers,
Nikes are those?
What's that?
What type of Nikes are those?
So
my son's
these
a sneakerhead. He's going to ask.
Oh, is he? These are the Kobe 9 Elites.
Okay.
And I think they were actually Kobe's first digital knit shoe, which was sort of groundbreaking at the time. But they're a high top. I'll show one more Kobe shoe. Since your son's a sneakerhead, these are the Kobe 6s. And what's actually interesting about what Kobe did in the sneaker world is, before Kobe, everyone was sort of obsessed with high top sneakers. But Kobe sort of looked at soccer, where these athletes are putting an immense amount of torque, on their ankles and in the areas of their feet, and said, why not try to make a high performance, low top basketball shoe? So yeah, it's actually quite impressive. But so to get back to your original question, I'd probably be doing something in the cooking world. I'm a Chopped junkie, binge watcher. So pizza, bread baking. I also love the that show on FX called The Bear. So, something in that world, potentially.
Bear's a good one. What's your favorite thing to make?
So comfort food wise, I love mac and cheese. Can't go wrong with a good mac and cheese. or just some sort of pasta dish, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. My other son's a mac and cheese aficionado, so
Awesome. Love it.
Got
Love
something
it.
on both fronts today, so perfect. All right, Kristian, thank you for your time today. Hey, if someone wants to reach out, ask you a question, find out more about you, what's the best way for someone to get a hold of you?
Yeah, I will. I'll give you a link to my LinkedIn page and also my
Perfect.
my professional page on my company's website. I'll also give you my personal email address, which is chris@chrisvilla.net, KRIS at KRISVILLA.net.
Okay.
Yeah, all those are great.
Awesome. We'll link that stuff in the show description. We'll probably hash the email address and maybe go to the website for the email address just so you don't get scraped and spammed from everyone. So
Yeah, for sure. If your son ever wants to visit us in Columbus, Ohio, would love to give him a tour or even just talk to him about engineering in the industry. So let me know.
Awesome. I will. I appreciate that. I'd be interested in the tour myself, so I might take you.
Yeah,
just
absolutely.
anyways, but
We'd
that's
love to have
awesome.
you.
So excellent. Well, Kristian Villanueva, everyone, senior mechanical engineer at Priority Designs. To find out more about him, Priority Designs, check out the show description, show notes, however you're consuming it. Hope everyone enjoyed the episode. Be sure to like, rate, review, share, do whatever you need to do with the podcast. And be sure to check out our website for more careers, more information, or if you want to share your career with us. Until next time, be kind to one another. Go Bills. Unboxing careers.